is Stephen Leacock. He was actually an English prose writer. He was a very famous author during those times. He placed a machine in front of the author. So you remember that old kind of photography, this was the machine which was there. Yes, you call it as a camera, but here he uses the word machine. By the photographer's comment about his face, this author feels humiliated. So he is the author, that is Leacock, that is the narrator. Hello everyone, I am Dr. Shalini, Professor of English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. Today we are here to understand one of the lessons prescribed by University of Mysuru for first sem B.Ca. We are going to understand about with the photographer. So this is written by, this short story is written by Stephen Leacock. Let us see what is there in today's module. We are going to understand about the author first, then we'll move on to title and theme. We'll know the summary first, and at last we'll move on to the literary devices that he has used in this story. So let me just introduce the author to you now. So this is Stephen Leacock. He was actually an English prose writer. He was a very famous author during those times. His prose parts, whatever it is, so it is known for the subtle humor that is included. These actually, all his short stories actually talk about the real life situations only that you're going to witness in today's module. Let us move on to the title and theme of this story. So we have the theme, that is insecurity, anger, then appearance, confidence, acceptance, controlling your emotions. So all these are the themes that are used in this story. This is a noticeable incident that in this story there is a photographer who doesn't like the narrator's appearance. So what are the situations the narrator experiences is what we are going to understand in this story. So let us begin with the summary. One day what happens, Leacock, that is the narrator, this story is in first person narration. So he goes to the studio for a photograph to be taken. So he meets the photographer there. So he asks him, the photographer who was there, he asks him to wait for some time. The appearance of the photographer is described over here. Suppose they ask you to present the character of the photographer, you need to write about how he was there, how his appearance was, how he was built, everything you need to talk about. Okay. So this photographer was with no enthusiasm at all. Okay. So he comes there to Leacock, he talks to him. He made the author to wait for an hour. So almost for an hour, the author, that is the narrator, waits over there. So in the meantime, the narrator who was waiting there for the photograph, he goes on reading magazines. At least 2 magazines he should have read from the beginning till the end. Okay, from the first page, first letter till the end. That is what is mentioned by the author. So you can guess that how long he has waited over there. Okay, photographer actually takes him to the inner room in order to take a photo of the author. So now he is there in the green room in order to take a photo. He placed a machine in front of the author. So you remember that old kind of photography, this one, the machine which was there. Yes, you call it as a camera, but here he uses the word machine. Okay, so he uses that machine, he places it in front of the author, but the photographer was not happy. Just note this word, not happy with the author's face. The author cannot change his face, isn't it? So this photographer goes on telling him, giving him suggestions in order to change the appearance. So first of all, the photographer doesn't like the face of the author. So he starts commenting on the face of the author. So this photographer, he comments on his face and he says that it was quite wrong. So he goes on commenting on the face of the author. His nose is like that, his hair is like this, so his forehead should have been like this. So all this he starts telling. The author accepts it. Yes, my face is not proper is what he accepts. Okay. So the photographer added that it would look better if it was 3/4 full. So he tells that it should have been like this. If at all your face was like this, it should have been better is what the photographer says. But now what to do? Author, there is no, for this author, there is no other way. He has to accept it. He cannot change his face. So now the author accepts it, accepts whatever he says. To prove his skill in photography, what this photographer does, he asks the author to open his mouth and close it. That means he wanted to make some changes in the face of the author. So he thinks if at all he does this, this might be good. So he tells him to open the mouth and close his mouth. Then he felt that the author's ears were bad. So he asked him to drop them a little more. Drop them in the sense maybe to pull. He tells him to pull his ears so that it will appear a little lower, or as if it is a little lower. Okay, so he asks him to pull it down, to drop it down a little, but there can't be any change. You understand, there can't be any change there. He also asked Leacock to roll his eyes under the eyelids. So that also he asks him to do. In order to prove his skill, he is doing all these. Though there are no changes that is going to happen, only to prove his skill in photography, he is just trying to do all this. To put the hands on knees, maybe to position or to focus the light properly, he tells him to put his hands on the knees. To turn the face little upward, just to lift his face a little upward, he tells. To expand the lungs, that is to breathe more, he says. To bend the neck, he also tells him to bend the neck. So all this is going on, suggesting in order to focus more or to show his skills. So all this he goes on doing. So by all this means, he just wanted to get the best feature on the author's face. Okay, so he wanted the best feature and expression of the author. So the photographer wanted to show that even though the author's face is bad looking, he just wanted to show his skills in photography, and he says that I have taken a very good photograph of yours. So all this he does. By the photographer's comment about his face, this author feels humiliated. So he is the author, that is Leacock, that is the narrator. So he feels humiliated. He could not bear that. This insult, he could not bear that. So his face was like that only. He cannot make any changes at all. So just by opening the mouth and closing it, he cannot make any change. Just by pulling his ears or by keeping his hands on the knees, there is no change that was going to happen. So all this made this author irritated. He gets frustrated because of the comments that were made by the photographer. He had lived with that face, that is the author had lived with that face for a long time. How long is it? So 40 years old. That means the author is 40 years old. He had been living with it for 40 years, and he knew his faults. What are the faults in his face? He already knew that. The author was angry and started to rise from the seat. The photographer took his photograph. Once the author was frustrated, he was already pissed off by the comments that the photographer has made. He just started raising up from the seat where he was sitting. He wanted to hit the photographer, but as he was rising from the seat, the photographer takes the photo of the author. So there also photographer tries to convince him that he has taken a very good photo, even though he was trying to stand up from the place he was sitting. On a Saturday, that author went back to the studio to get his photograph. So before leaving, he just wanted to have a look at the photograph, but the photographer says, no, you will have a look after a little while. Maybe I have to make few changes here. I have to make some editing and all. So I'll be giving it to you on Saturday, is what he says. So after that, this author goes back to the studio on a Saturday. He wanted to check his photograph. He wanted to get the photograph. So the photographer shows the photo of the author. Now he has already taken a photo. Now that is ready on Saturday. So he goes there and he asks for the photo. Then he shows him the photo. Then what does the author feel there? The author was not able to identify his own image in it. So he was not ready to accept that it is his image, because he was not able to recognize that it was his image only. Because the photographer made so many changes in his eyes, eyebrow, mouth, etc. So the whole face was actually distorted. There were many changes that was made in his eyes, maybe in his eyebrows, mouth, chin. So there are so many places that the photographer had already made changes. Even the hair, for that matter, little hair was actually falling on the forehead, but that also he had removed. So author had no chance that he could identify, he could recognize the photograph of his. The photograph didn't look like the author's photo at all. So this photograph did not look like that of the author's. So now what will he do? The author asked the question, is it me? The first question the author got when he saw the photo was, is this actually me? So he asked the same thing to the photographer also. Now, the author wanted a photograph that was looking like the author. So that would have looked like him. But he wanted something that it would depict his face, so that like whatever God has given him, he wanted that to be shown properly. He just wanted his friends to keep that as a memory after he dies. So many things he had in his mind. He tells everything to the photographer who had already taken the photo. He wanted something that his friends might have kept after his death to reconcile them to his loss. But whatever the author wanted, he had not received at all. So there were so many changes. He himself could not recognize, then what will his friends do there? Isn't it? So he was not able to do it. He could not get whatever he was expecting. Leacock didn't accept the photo given by the photographer. So what does he do? That the reason was, the photo was too beautiful. That was the reason given by the author. The photograph was too beautiful to bear any resemblance to his appearance. Yes, the photograph was really very good. He was looking more handsome, but it was not he himself. It was not the author at all. There were so many changes. Now he had become more handsome. He appeared more handsome in this photograph than he actually was. So this is what he saw. That is the reason he wanted to reject the photograph. So he did not accept it. Now Leacock preferred his features less face as it is. So whatever features he had, he didn't want that now. Like whatever the very good photograph he has taken, all those features he didn't want in his face. He wanted the actual photograph that was there, and would not accept an improved one which is unlike his face. It was not at all like his face. He didn't want to accept it at all. So now he calls it by that name only. So he uses that phrase, this is of no use for me. He just gets so furious with the photographer. He just tells him, I cannot do anything keeping this. You please keep it for yourself. You sell it to somebody wherein that looks like that person. So I don't want any changes in my face. I wanted all this featureless face only. He was very frustrated. He didn't even pay him. He just tells all this on the face of the photographer and comes back to his house crying. So this was the short summary of the photographer written by Leacock. So this is a wonderful story. If you go through each and every line, it will be wonderful. You can experience what is the frustration that the author experiences when something is not when he gets something which he did not expect at all. So I would want you to watch this video, then go back to the lesson, read it properly, and then come to the class for discussion. So thank you for your time. Keep learning. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.